The long list of plans that you went over with Mr. Rashbaum that you were going to have in Tallahassee post-murder date, none of those plans happened, right?
No.
Because you moved to South Florida, right?
Because I felt unsafe to stay here, yes.
And did you feel safe in South Florida?
No.
Did you buy a house in Tallahassee after the murder?
No, I did not.
Did you rent a house in Tallahassee after the murder?
No, I didn't live in Tallahassee after the murder.
Did the boys go to school that fall here in Tallahassee?
No, all our plans were broken.
And what was the purpose of those questions? Of course you didn't. You moved to South Florida. You didn't have plans in Tallahassee that got executed. Why were you asked about all those things?
I don't know why I was asked questions by the defense counsel.
The book event that you were asked about, did that event happen?
I didn't speak at the event, but the event still happened.
Have you had several events related to that book that have happened?
I have.
And what events were those?
Do you mean just in Tallahassee, or do you mean in other places?
Everywhere.
I've spoken at various schools about human trafficking and about my book. I think there was one event that still happened in Tallahassee about a year later.
All right. Chase, what do you got?
One phrase I'm going to take away from this is post-murder date. Post-murder date. So, and I think this was, the manipulative nature of this is probably obvious to anybody over the age of 13 here. And I'm stunned that defense didn't object to this question about his own questions. And maybe because he just has a hard time with questions to begin with. But her lips, I want you to watch the behavior of what we saw before and now being examined by the prosecution here. And her lips are now parted. And you can get a screenshot of somebody being interviewed by their attorney and a prosecuting attorney, and you'll see the difference. And you won't even need to know context behind it. You can see the difference in most people. So this is a new behavior we're seeing, and it's very common for witnesses to do this to appear more innocent when they're being questioned, especially by an oppositional person. So this subconsciously makes them, without them really realizing it, increases their look of innocence to the jury. And we do a lot of behaviors, especially on the stand, unconsciously, and to help to influence the jury. What I think would have been great here, and I'm on neither side of this because I know very little, would be the punishment question. And when it comes to interrogations, the punishment question is one of the greats. And maybe we're making it too popular here on the channel, and now it's going to the jig is up for a lot of people. I don't know.
Yeah.
But the punishment question essentially says, what do you think should happen to the person who did this? And it essentially asks somebody to, determine their own fate if they're guilty. In this case, they might ask a question like, if someone was involved with this murder in any way, what do you think should happen to them if any evidence ever comes up in the future, once everything starts to come to the surface? What do you think should happen to that person? So that's a good punishment question by proxy. So that's the punishment question by proxy. I think I just invented that term. Scott, what do you got?
All right. Yeah, I agree with you. The punishment questions is one of my favorites. That reminded me of it. I don't know why it reminded me of this story. And I hit the H on why. I don't know what's up with that.
Why?
Anyway, my buddy Jason, who was the head of homicide over at here in Nashville a while back, they had a guy that they were under the impression had murdered somebody. And they said, the last thing the person sees, they can take your retinas and pull those off and put them under a microscope, and it's almost like a camera keeps that picture. So whoever he saw last is gonna be on his retinas. We're gonna be able to see who that is. Would there be any reason for you to be in that picture, to be on his retinas like that? And I think that's when he puked up that he did it. Anyway. I know Jason's going to be watching this. Sorry, dude. I probably shouldn't have said that. Anyway, I think this was a great tactical move by the prosecuting attorney because she just shot down a lot of the questions that the defense attorney asked to help qualify Wendy's story. So I think she did a great job. I really like this attorney. She doesn't give a hoot. about what's happening, about getting up in this girl's business. So this woman's business, excuse me. So I think it's, I really like her. I think she'd make a great interrogator because she doesn't mind getting there and fuss real good. Now, when Wendi says, I think there was an event that still happened in Tallahassee about a year later, she shows an expression of disgust. And it happens fairly quickly, but it's so big. I actually used it for the graphic for this video, for the thumbnail. So if you go back and once this is over, go back and look at the thumbnail for this, the graphic, and you'll see that expression. And it was very brief. It was like 3 frames, I think, 3 or 4 frames, but it's actually there, and that's disgust. So whether that disgust is directed toward the questioning style of the attorney or specifically at the attorney herself, or the answer even, I have no earthly idea, but that just lets us know there's an issue there. Something's up in here. I don't know what, because again, like all of us, I don't know what the backstory is on this. We don't do that. We just go over the videos that we present here, that we show you guys. So again, if you'll subscribe and go back and watch some of these things, you'll see what I'm talking about. Mark, what do you got?
Yeah, look, I think what's happening here is just Wendi is being generally destabilized there. I think the disgust may be about that. I think the open mouth may be about that as well, that trying to take in more information, because there's a real pattern interrupt here. The lawyer has started off by attacking covertly the questioning of the previous lawyer. And that's a pattern that certainly in the questions from the previous lawyer, you just weren't getting. They were questions of some sort, as you say, Chase, but they were relatively direct. We knew who they were directed towards. In this case, this lawyer really doesn't care about the answers that this person's giving. She's making a point to the jury, regardless of who she has on the stand here. I think that's probably disconcerting. It's destabilizing, quite an interesting thing to do. And I think the subject, therefore, Adelson here, is showing elements of confusion around this. And I think that could be a tactic moving forward to get more interesting answers out of her as she becomes destabilized, because anybody watching this will have noticed she has been quite well controlled, though all of us here have seen some clear but still subtle leaks of tension and stress. On the whole, from an outside point of view, let's say a layperson's point of view, they'd probably be seeing somebody who's very, very controlled and very, very relaxed on the whole. I think this lawyer is starting to poke at that. Greg, what do you think?
You want more evidence? She's starting to poke at it, and that it's perceived. There is a threat recognition. There's a threat assessment in Adelson as she looks. As she starts to talk about and asking her about feeling safe in South Florida, look at that disdain in her face. Her brow goes up, and then she does fading facts. And she says no. So that's her first indicator that, okay, I had enough of this already. You can see it in her. And then she changes her movement. She becomes more wooden. Her brow goes down. Her eyes narrow. She's crinkling at the brow, and she's got incomplete head shakes now. And they're not just incomplete. They're incomplete to one side. She's nodding her head halfway. Go back and watch it. It's powerful. She sees the threat, and she's not breaking eye contact with that threat. She's trying to make sure it's there. She does that twist in the chair again. Now we're starting to see her stress moves. Not big, very subtle. This is not, what is his name? Chris Watts. It's not that. This is very subtle movement. And then she gets back to nailing down very specific questions because it's a threat. Do you mean in Tallahassee specifically? She's got the best eyes for eye accessing. I'm going to show you an example of why memory is broken up in the way our eyes move, because she's looking to her right to recall facts and recall things that she's done from rote, things she remembers. But when she's thinking about a specific incident in Tallahassee, watch those eyes go above the brow ridge into the visual. And she goes, one, I think. And Scott, I love the fact she shows that disgust. Here's the question. Is it disgust with the question? Is it disgust with the situation? Was it a Holiday Inn or a Days Inn or someplace that she was doing the event and, or maybe she couldn't be there and it was a big deal? That disgust could come from anything. And we can't tell that. We can only see what we can see. that's the beautiful part of it. And the last thing I wanted to share is when you're talking about that retina thing, I wonder, did he come up with that himself? Because the first time I ever read somebody use that was in Jack the Ripper case.
I don't think he didn't invent that. No, but they'd heard it.
Jack the Ripper. It was a London investigator who had somebody in there trying to put in the corner and use that as a technique. Yep. Told them that they could see. And this guy had no idea. And he's like, I still didn't do it. So that's the way it goes.
One of those tape replays.
The long list of plans that you went over with Mr. Rashbaum that you were going to have in Tallahassee post-murder date, none of those plans happened, right?
No.
Because you moved to South Florida, right?
Because I felt unsafe to stay here, yes.
Did you feel safe in South Florida?
No.
Did you buy a house in Tallahassee after the murder?
No, I did not.
Did you rent a house in Tallahassee after the murder?
No, I didn't live in Tallahassee after the murder.
Did the boys go to school that fall here in Tallahassee?
No, all our plans were broken.
And what was the purpose of those questions? Of course you didn't. You moved to South Florida. You didn't have plans in Tallahassee that got executed. Why were you asked about all those things?
I don't know why I was asked questions by the defense counsel.
The book event that you were asked about, did that event happen?
I didn't speak at the event, but the event still happened.
Have you had several events related to that book that have happened?
I have.
And what events were those?
Do you mean just in Tallahassee, or do you mean in other places?
Everywhere.
I've spoken at various schools about human trafficking and about my book. I think there was one event that still happened in Tallahassee about a year later.
If you like this video, get the full body language breakdown and analysis on our main channel by clicking this video right here.
You know what?